A very good afternoon to one and all present here. My name is Aditya Krishna Rao, and I welcome you all on behalf of Public Policy and Opinion Cell IIT Kanpur to the second day of the Indian Governance Summit to 2021. Today, we are here to discuss on an extremely interesting topic, politics. Well, not exactly, but the field of political consultancy has grown rapidly over the last few years and has caused monumental changes in the way elections are fought today at every level of legislature, be it Panchayati Raj, municipal elections, the state elections, or the national elections. The use of digital media and emerging analytical technologies has become a key factor in planning great election campaigns. And to discuss upon the same, upon the role of technology and analytics in the political domain, we have with us Mr. Subhash Chand Tanan, Engagement Manager at Indian Political Action Committee. He is an alumnus of IIT Kanpur and graduated from the Department of Electrical Engineering. He has been with IPAC since 2015 and has served as various roles, from being the data analyst and technology team leader for around 4 years to being the engagement manager for past couple of years. He currently handles analytics, technology, marketing, digital communication, strategy, and research at IPAC. And if I'm not exaggerating, he's even the person, I should say, he and his team, he's even the person who predicted the results of 2019 Andhra Pradesh state elections and the Lok Sabha elections of Andhra Pradesh, and also the 2019 Bihar Lok Sabha election with an accuracy of over 95%. So I guess that's good enough to tell what kind of guest we have today. And without further ado, I would request Subhash sir to begin with his presentation. For all the participants, if you have any questions during the course of presentation, you can add it in the chat. And after that, I'll be asking you to raise your hands to ask sir directly. Subhash, it's over to you.
Thank you, Aditya. So as Aditya mentioned, today we'll discuss about use of technology and analytics in the political domain. In a daily life, we keep discussing about politics, how politicians they work, how people vote, what are the different things generally in terms of the political campaigns. And these days, even people relate everything to the elections only, even the work of government. So it's a really interesting. And in past 5 to 6 years, people have tried to do a lot of things in terms of utilizing technology and analytics to modernize this particular field. So we'll get into this topic. Before that, I first would like to know the expectations of all of you people in terms of what you guys would like to know from this particular session, what you are trying to get out of this. So if anyone has that set of expectations, please raise your hand and Aditya will unmute you and then you tell them.
You can raise your hand, I'll unmute you, or if you want, you can put it in chat also.
It's because then I'll try to cover all those things in this session alongside whatever that I already have planned.
Yeah, Vipul Khinder.
Hello, Aditya.
Yeah.
Am I audible, Aditya?
Yes, you are.
So Subhash, I just had a query, as you are saying that in politics, this data analytics is picking up. So essentially, how much are these parties spending on, this analytical consulting and all this this new field that you are talking about? So how much tentatively they are spending on consulting with firms like IPAC and other firms in the sector? Just this much I have.
Fine. We'll cover this point.
Anyone else who has anything to ask in particular?
Fine. So let's
Hitesh, Hitesh asks, what level of machine learning is necessary to arrive at realistic? Basically, he's asking the technical aspect of the entire analytics that you do of election campaign. Is basic level of ML that we learn in college sufficient, or is there are some higher algorithms that you use? So basically, he's asking the technical aspect.
We'll try to cover that point also. So generally, I do not use PPTs or slides in such session, but this is relatively new to a lot of people. People generally don't have idea about how to utilize, and then they have very wrong idea about the political domain also. So I'll use PPT for this particular session, just that everyone able to understand things and people stay focused on this. During the session, on any of the topic or anything, if anyone has any sort of doubt or let's say would like to add something, you guys just raise your hand and then Aditya will unmute you.
And just before you start, Astha is pointing out, looking to know more about the potential drawbacks and blind spots in using analytics for politics.
Fine, we'll cover this one also. So before we get into the political domain, you guys obviously on a daily basis, you guys hear about all other domains also, that how people have tried a lot of things in terms of using analytics and technology in different domains, and they have made a lot of advancement in recent years. That let's say ed tech, agri tech, or deliveries, grocery or food delivery, fintech, e-commerce, travel tech, all those domains, they have done a lot of advancement in recent years. And all these domains have one thing common, and that is basically solving the traditional problem statements with the use of technology and analytics. If you go through any of these domains, it's not like in agri-tech, only now people have started to use these things. But now people have found out those solutions, tech and analytic solutions for the traditional problems. Similarly, in the education, similarly in the finance, in e-commerce, people have tried a lot of things in terms of first finding out the problem statement, and then you try to see if you are able to build any solution based on analytics or technology for that particular problem. So that's the next question. Can we do similar thing in the political domain? Because people have tried that in all the domains. So why can't we try this thing in the political domain? More or less assume that we can do this thing. Then how to do this thing? Similarly, that people, the similar concept or logic that people have followed in all other domains, that you find out those traditional problem statements or the ways of, let's say there's a particular thing which people are still using traditional ways to handle that particular problem. You try to build solution using tech or analytics for that particular problem. That's a similar concept that we follow at IPAC also. And across all the political consulting or let's say tech startups that you see, all those startups follow this particular concept. Now, before we get into the use of analytics and technology in the political domain, first we need to understand what is the political domain, because a lot of people think that political domain is limited to, let's say, elections, or they are limited to only political parties or limited to voting. Generally, when I discuss this topic, I tell people that I generally try to understand political domain with 3P concept. That is, first one is public, political leaders, and political parties. So this political ecosystem is the interaction, all sort of interaction between these three entities. So whatever interaction that you see between public and political leaders, or public and political parties, or public political leaders or political parties, all these three entities, so whatever communication, whatever interaction that you see in day-to-day life, all those things are part of the political ecosystem. Political ecosystem have that thing, that political ecosystem is not only about the elections. If you see, let's say in any particular assembly constituency or Lok Sabha constituency, elections happen there only for one time in terms of 5 years. So, but there are a lot of other things to do for elected representative also, for the people who wants to contest the elections, even for the electors also, and the political parties which are active in that particular constituency. So generally, if we see that what sort of interaction that happens between these three entities, so there are a few examples. So let's say grievance redressal. A lot of people go to political parties, they raise their problem, they expect them to solve that thing. Especially in the Corona time, if you have seen in the second wave of pandemic, most of the people were dependent on the government, political connections rather than the government. So people went to their MLAs, MPs, their political leaders to get hospital beds, to get the oxygen, to get the medicines. So these are all things falls under the grievance redressal. Policy feedback, election events, rallies, election campaigns, any sort of two-way communication between any of these two entities, manifesto feedback, any of the issues that you would like to identify in any particular geographical area, party membership, digital campaigns. So all these things are part of the interaction between these three entities. All these things are part of the political domain. So whenever you think about that, you also, let's say you want to understand about political ecosystem, or you want to build something in the political ecosystem, you don't have to limit yourself to the elections only. There are a lot of things which keep going in the political ecosystem. So before we get into the use of technology analytics, anyone has any doubt related to understanding of the political ecosystem? So we'll try to keep very interactive because I just don't want to go through it. We still have a lot of time. So anyone has any doubt related to the understanding of political ecosystem? If not, then we'll move back. Fine. Now, so first we'll try to cover use of technology, and then we'll cover the use of analytics, because both of these, you cannot combine both of these. Obviously, they support each other, but both of these things can be utilized in the isolation also. So now first thing comes into mind that why now people are trying to get into the political domain. People like us who have the tech background, why they are trying to get into the political domain? Because before, let's say 10 years, the one biggest problem was the penetration of internet. People didn't have that much internet coverage. So whatever that you want to do using the technology, obviously people ideally should have internet access or have a smartphone in their hands. Only then you'll be able to reach out to those people. But with now, year and year, you can see that how in India, people are able to get the access of internet. By 2025, more than 1 billion people in India will have the access to internet. So you have this much potential user base, you can reach out for anything using the technology. Similar way, if you see the number of smartphone users in India, that is also increasing. Because of obviously internet reach, because of now low price of smartphones, and a lot of other things, obviously because of the social media also. Now, these are the two factors. Because of that, now we know that this is the good time to get into the political domain and try to solve the problems using the technology, because all the people have access to handheld devices. And you can reach out to those people using, let's say, websites, web application, mobile application, or telephony mediums. But people now have their devices. So this is the one biggest reason that in recent years, a lot of new startups have started to work in this political space. Now, in terms of understanding how to utilize technology in the political domain, we'll go through the few of the examples. But the simple thing is, we at IPAC also, what we try to do is we see that during on day-to-day basis, when we interact with masses, we interact with political leaders or parties, we try to identify those traditional problems which we can either let's say we make efficient that particular process, or we can completely change that particular process using the technology. So I'll go through a few of the examples. So in recently, when we were working in Tamil Nadu with DMK, so in India, you see that all the political parties, they conduct their party membership drive. Few parties conduct these things every year. Few parties conduct on an interval of 2 years, 3 years, or 4 years. But they have, all these parties follow physical process. You have to go to a particular spot, you fill one form, you get the receipt, and then through this process, you will become the part of the party. Now we wanted to conduct this drive for DMK in Tamil Nadu, but the biggest problem was in the pandemic, obviously, because of a lot of restriction, you cannot have the physical process. Now, because of these restrictions, we were also forced to find out the tech-based solution. Now, what we did, we developed one web application. Using that, anyone who is, let's say, who is to part of the DMK party, they can go on one particular website, they can verify their phone number, all other details, and if within 5 to 6 minutes, they can register for the party, and they can even get the ID card for that particular party. So no one has to go to any particular sport, and whatever benefits that you would like to give to these people, you can give at that moment only. Like in a lot of other states, political party also give benefits like health insurance, a lot of other things to their party members. So while registering online, when you ask people to register on a particular digital platform, at that moment only you can enroll those people for the benefits also. So this is the one of the best example in terms of how we picked one traditional problem where people had a lot of involvement. Now in that, they had a lot of people also in terms of you have to put a lot of resources at all those sports. And also you have to conduct that membership drive for at least 6 to 7 months to cover a complete state. Now, with this, we conducted this drive only for 10 to 15 days. We got more than 40 lakh people registered for DMK. And people were very interested into knowing that what is that this particular solution there we have developed. Now, it's not like the solution is the intellectual property rights of IPAC, because all the people, it's open. You go on their website, you can see how we develop this thing. So anyone who has the capability of developing web applications, they can implement such solutions. So this was one of the solutions, one of the tech-based solutions where we tried to solve this particular problem. Now the next one is for political parties. Let's say you run this membership drive, you build a lot of volunteer base, you have some political supporters also. So how do you keep those people connected and engaged with the party, with the leader? That is the biggest challenge that all the political parties face. So if you see on a particular year, they will have more than, let's say, 20 lakh volunteers. After just 6-7 months, they will have only 1 lakh volunteers, because obviously until unless you give something to do on a daily basis, or you something to get them engaged, keep them engaged, these people are not going to stay, because they are not getting anything out of in terms of building connection with the party or keeping constant contact with the party. Also for them, it's not feasible to go or attend political rallies, political campaigns. It's not possible for all the people. So different parties in India, they came with the solution that they started to build mobile applications around the political parties or political leader. So one of the best example is Namo App. Now, because of the Namo App, BJP in last 4-5 years, they were able to connect with a lot of masses on a daily basis. And also they have a lot of things directly they can provide it to their supporters. They can make them feel privileged. Whatever, let's say they would like to announce particular announcement for the party, they generally put that thing first on the mobile. So they are trying to build their own ecosystem. It's like you have Facebook, Twitter, Insta. Similarly, they are trying to build their own political social media using this particular. Similar thing, DMK tried using Stellanani mobile app. This is the one mobile app where you have all sort of features that you generally go and see on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, all these social media. Also using this app, they can raise their request to their political leaders. They can, let's say one party member is in requirement of blood. They can put the request here. People who are nearby in that area, they can go and donate blood also, like that. So they are not just trying to utilize this thing only for the elections. They are trying to build, DMK in Tamil Nadu, they are trying to build one ecosystem where they can make that connected network of all the volunteers, all the party members. It's not like only the party leaders or politicians are trying to help to the public. Even let's say someone who is volunteer and that person is capable enough to help someone, they are also trying to connect those people also. And similar thing, TMC they did in West Bengal. They launched Didi do that. All other parties also, they have, these are the 3 really top apps in terms of the features, in terms of the utility. The Aam Aadmi Party also have their own app. Congress also have their own app. So all here I would like to show that thing. It's not only limited to the national party. DMK and TMC, those are the regional parties. So even the regional party, which are limited to 1 or 2 states, they also trying to get into that mode that they would like to use the tech-based solution for all these problems. Next one is, now one biggest problem that people were facing. So we realized this 2-3 years back. So generally that people go to their leaders, their MLAs, MPs, their political leaders also, and they raise their request there. That might be they have the water problem, they might have some transfer requests, they might have something related to, let's say, medical emergency. One of the biggest problem is they do not have the centralized system to manage all these requests. Even one political leader that has, let's say, resolved more than 1,000 requests in the last 5 years, that person also doesn't have that record of who all these 1,000 people are. So that's the problem that we face in West Bengal. So we try to solve that thing using this Didi Ke Bolo. So obviously when you launch something in the political domain, you try to brand it and give that name, all those things. But in the backend, this is a completely tech-based solution. This was the combination of helpline number, one web form, and then backend, one web application. For the web application, all the people starting from the assembly constituency, then the Lok Sabha, district president, even the government officials also, they had access to this particular platform. So let's say if I am sitting in one particular village, I have raised a request, I have that choice to raise it to anyone in that dropdown. Let's say I would like to raise it to my MLA, or I would like to raise it to directly to the one party president, or I would like to raise it to the West Bengal government. So they had that option to raise it to any of things that they think this is the person who can easily solve that problem. And in backend, those respective POCs they used to get all these requests, and then they, with the help of the government or the party, they used to resolve these things. So this is the one complete why we included helpline in this thing, because in like West Bengal, you have a lot of rural areas. So you don't want to have the complete dependency on the internet. So that's why we launched the helpline number also. In that was also very automated thing. Directly you record all the requests and everything goes on that particular platform. So these are three really big examples in terms of utilizing technology in terms of solving the problem. All the things that I have picked here are related to in terms of solving the problem at the large scales. We have worked at a lot of problem statement solving in terms of improving one particular process, building one particular, let's say, application for the internal problems, because I have not covered those. Because these are the platforms we have that had impact on the larger masses. That's a really interesting thing about the political domain, that whatever that you do, you can have the impact on a larger base. So before we get into the analytics, is there any doubt related to technology? So one thing I will also cover in terms of what languages that we use, what technology that we use in terms of technology stack. That's a completely on the people who are working on these things, because one of the interesting part about political domain is people who are there, who are the political leaders or parties, they don't have idea about the technology. And obviously you cannot expect them to understand technology. But because of that, you get the complete freedom to build the applications. They're never going to come to you and ask you that, why did you develop this application Angular instead of React.js? They're not going to ask you. For them, the utility of the product, that is most important. So whatever, let's say you want to use Django in the backend, you want to use PHP, or you want to build it on something else, that's completely new. So that's the interesting part. Even in IPAC, and I can say that thing for other organizations also, that people try different languages in different applications just to build their own capabilities to understand these languages. So we have developed mobile applications in Java, Kotlin, even we have tried in the Flutter also. So that's an interesting part, that you do not have any restrictions or even any expectations from the client side. If you, let's say, we generally don't call politician our client, but even let's say you use that term, you do not have any expectation from them. You don't even have any restriction from them. So that's the most interesting part, that whatever it's on you, that you find out the problem starting first. So don't expect that politician will come to you and tell you, okay, this is the one problem, you solve this using the technology. Because they don't know which problem can be solved using the technology. So generally it falls on the people who are working as young professional, people who have the tech background, that you first have to identify those problems where you can put the use of technology, and then you try to solve that thing. So like in 2014 general elections, BJP used 3D hologram rallies. That is also one classic example in terms of using the technology. But it was never like BJP asked someone, you get the 3D hologram thing or those things. Someone approached them with the solution that this thing can be done. Political leader can conduct rallies different locations by staying at one location only. So they like this idea. So that's the thing, that people, you first have to think and build that solutions, and then you will see a lot of use of those things. Yeah. So any doubt or anything that you guys should know more about the technology?
Anyone who has anything to ask may raise his hand. Yes, I see a hand. Yes, Vipul.
So Subhas, you mentioned that BJP and Mamta Didi and all these parties are having apps. So Congress and Aam Aadmi Party also having any kind of apps to reach out to their...
Yes, all these parties have these things. I have taken example of these three apps because these three apps are very feature rich. So they have built a lot of things, not limited to elections.
So what is the name of the app for Congress and Aam Aadmi Party?
both the parties have their apps with the name of their parties.
Okay, okay.
Any other questions? You may either put your questions in chat. I'll take them up. I guess there are none, so you can continue.
Yeah, I would like to ask, like, on the app, we can get the information about the demand of any local area. So do we extract the information from that and inform the local leaders?
So one thing is, so whatever, now the idea about the mobile application is that you want to build a constant connect with the public. Now, or and above that, whatever interaction that you would like to have, you definitely can have on the mobile app. The only thing is, obviously, the information and data that you take from particular individual, it's very sensitive. So at all those stages, you have to inform them how you are going to utilize that data. So generally, people don't have issue in terms of how you utilize their data. They have the issue in terms of not telling that. So whenever, let's say, you are asking particular question to respond on particular thing, there we generally we suggest this to all the political parties that you mention that clearly, that this is how you are going to utilize that data. So once you have that network, you have that visibility, then whatever that information that you would like to take from public or you would like to share from you, it's a two-way communication channel. You definitely can do those things on these mobile apps.
So I had another question. Hello, Subhash.
Yes.
Yeah. So you mentioned that in West Bengal, there in that app there was a feature to ask raise their concerns for people, right? So like,
Yes.
could you have any idea about how responsive were the actions on those requests? Like, did government do something, and like, is there any data on that?
So I'll tell you that in West Bengal, so we launched this thing in, I think, just after general election in 2019. So they till now they have received around like 50 lakh requests. They have resolved around more than 20 lakh requests. And so in remaining 30 lakh requests, because a lot of requests are, you see that related to transfer requests, a lot of requests which are people trying to get the loan, all those things, which are not eligible requests, or will say government is not able to solve those things. West Bengal government, what they did, so once they received these many requests, they categorized all these requests. They did a lot of backend analysis, and they tried to categorize these. So let's say you receive the request from Calcutta, a lot, let's say 1 lakh requests. 90% of those requests are related to drinking water. So now, rather than solving each and every problem, there is a bigger issue in the drinking water in that particular city. So you try to start one project to solve that problem at the city level. So that's what they have done. So so there are a lot of requests which are specific to individuals. Let's say someone has issue with police, someone has taken his land, all those things. That is specific to particular individual. So they try to solve these things using the different channels. There are a lot of requests using that they categorize, and then they have those mapping in terms of in which particular district. These are the 3 issues that all the people are facing. So then they try to bring a lot of projects related to those particular problems. And if any one of you heard about this thing, then after 1 year, West Bengal government launched one program. I'm not able to recall the name of that program. In that, what they did, they asked all their government officials to visit all the panchayats, stay there for 1 day, and resolve these problems. So they gave these problems to those BDO officer and district level officers. They asked them to go and set up a camp at the panchayat level, and then call these individuals and solve these problems at that moment. So there also they solved around like 12 lakh problems. So 6 lakh individuals registered their problems there, and they solved more than 12 lakh, because a lot of people have double or 3, 4 problems also. So West Bengal has done that thing. In DMK is also doing that thing. Aam Aadmi Party also have tried this thing. So a lot of parties have done this thing. One thing is, when you ask these parties to use such channel, obviously for them also, if they do not work on or solve these problems, it will create a lot of negativity. The problems, and you, let's say, don't work on in terms of solving these problems. So rather than giving you something, hello, Am I audible?
Yes, I guess there's some internet connection issue from your side. It's fine now. You can continue. It's fine.
Okay. So that's the thing is generally parties also, the government also know that you cannot just keep collecting these problems. You'll have to solve these problems also. Otherwise, it will create unnecessary negativity among the masses.
Sure, that helps. Thanks, Subhas.
Any other question?
Anyone who has any other questions, he may raise his hand. Vipul raised his hand again. Yes, Vipul.
So Subhash, as you were mentioning that these political consultancies are pitching these solutions to the politicians. So I was just wondering that are you guys also like testing these solutions beforehand, or you have some kind of a reference that this strategy worked in some other part of the world or something like that? Like, how are you making that presentation more convincing? Like, are you testing it, or are you referring to some other success stories, or like how is that working?
Hello, Vipul. Am I audible?
Yes, Aditya, you are audible. I guess Subhas has some internet problems.
Yeah, right.
Just a minute. We'll try to get back in a moment. Seems there's some internet connection issue. We'll try to get back as soon as possible. Hello, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible now. I guess you can turn off your video for the time being while you're
No,
presenting.
it's fine. I think it's a sudden issue that was there.
Okay, sure.
Aditya, can you repeat the question that Vipul asked?
So we will basically ask that how do you come up with the proposals for these political parties? Like you mentioned the 3D, the election campaigns in 3D projections and all that. So how do you come up with the proposals for this? Do you test them on your own, or you take instances from other countries' political campaigns and all?
So generally, so I'll cover that point in the data analytics. There you will be able to understand that how we generally reach on what are sort of campaigns that we have to run, and then how we build that solution. So I'll cover that in the analytics part. So that's where you have the use of analytics in terms of deciding to target one particular voter group, what campaigns you'll have to run. So generally the analytics have that dependency on the availability of data or information. So in any domain that you would like to work, first you have to see that do you have enough data or information to work on that particular domain. So generally in the political domain, you have 4 important sources of the information or the data. One is census, which is publicly available, where you get the information of the demography features of all the different entities. You have the election results. So election results are publicly available, and for all the elections, you can get the result till the booth level. So publicly available on ECI website. Third one is the social media. Obviously, using different APIs, you can get the information from social media. Fourth one is the political campaigns that you run. Obviously, during the political campaigns also, you capture a lot of information. So now using these 4 data sets, we try to do a lot of analysis, and internally we have categorized all the analytical work that we do in 4 different headers. And using these headers, you'll be able to understand very clearly in terms of how you utilize the analytics in the political domain. First one is electoral analytics. So whatever analysis that we do using the election results, that we put in the electoral analytics header. So I'll give you one example. So generally, so you have the election results available for all the elections. So now using the past elections, let's say using past 6 or 7 elections, you would like to build a predictive modeling to know that what will be happen in particular assembly constituencies. So we have tried those things in IPAC also. So I'll give you an example. Let's in 2014, Arun Jaitley contested from Amritsar. Now, if you do the past analysis of 6 Lok Sabha elections in Amritsar, you'll get to know that you cannot put any outside candidate in the Amritsar parliamentary constituency, because the winning probability of outside candidate in that assembly constituency was absolutely zero. So that's how, before even you make any decision, using the behavior of voters, what they have done in the past elections, you can build these predictive modeling. So we use these predictive modeling in candidate selection also. We also use these predictive modeling to understand the state before we get into any of these states. So let's say we want to start a new project in Karnataka. So before you get there, you first try to understand the electoral history of that particular state. Not only numbers, you try to build the different models and you try to understand that what have happened, and using that information, that retrospective analysis, you try to predict what will happen in the, or let's say all the things remain same. So electoral analytics is about building all these predictive modeling. So here's the thing that you try to use machine learning, you have to try to build products using various machine learning algorithms. We have done a lot of work in the electoral analytics, and it generally always helps us to understand that particular state. And whenever you get into that particular state, you have a high level understanding of how your voters generally behave during the elections. So this is, and on basis of that only we make a lot of decisions in terms of the candidate selections, in terms of also that what sort of candidate that you would like to give there. What sort, let's say if though 2 political parties are contesting in alliance. So in Tamil Nadu, you see that a lot of parties contest in alliance. DMK and INC were in alliance. Now, which state should be contested by DMK and vice versa also which state should be contested by INC? To decide that thing, you also use the electoral history of that particular assembly constituency. And you know that the higher probability is to win DMK. Then you give that ticket to DMK rather than give it to INC. So we use the electoral analytics to build these predictive modeling and to find out these winning probabilities, to find out these chances. And generally we use these things. So it's really helpful for us also. And one of the interesting part is publicly all the data that you need related to do this particular electoral analytics is that is publicly available. Other thing is when you combine the electoral behavior of people using the electoral results with the census, you can get a lot of insights. Let's say you want to see that how the development in that particular village have the correlation between the vote share of a particular party. So from census, you get all those information, how many schools that they have, how many in terms of roads, how many, a lot of other government buildings that they have, how many workers that they have, how many working in terms of salaried class that they have. You get all these information in census. Now using those features of a particular village, so you get these features of the village, you can see that, and then you have the election results, you have their voting behavior. When you combine these things, you can know the correlation between, is there any correlation between in terms of number of workers in a particular village versus vote share for a particular party, number of, let's say, educated people in a particular village, number of schools, lot of other things. We try to find out these correlation between the electoral side and the demography of that particular village or let's say town or ward. So electoral analytics is very interesting. It's very easy to do. Easy because this is the only one header where you have all the data in a very, very defined format. So from census, from election commission, you'll get all these data in a very defined format. So you don't have to do a lot of data engineering there. You just have to do the data analysis or data, you build the models there. Now the second thing is survey analytics, which is for us also is quite new. We started to do these things only in 2017 in terms of a very structured manner. So survey analytics is knowing about what is happening at that particular moment. So electoral is about knowing what happened there in past. Survey is to know what is happening there. That's it. Or today we would like to know that what is the behavior of voter for upcoming general elections in India. So you do that survey. You ask people that, let's say if elections are to be conducted now, to which party they would like to vote. Similar questions you ask me. So survey is basically to know what is happening at that particular moment. For organizations like us, IPAC or any other organizations which are consulting political parties, for us, it doesn't matter who is winning or losing in the survey. For us, important point is knowing the trend of that survey. Even if you are lagging behind in the particular assembly constituency, but if you have the upward movement of upward tendency of your vote share, you might still able to cover that till the elections. So it's not only about predicting who is winning or who is losing. Even the parties will not be interested in knowing that thing. Eventually, they know that will get to know about that thing after the elections. So they are also interested in terms of knowing that what is happening in particular assembly constituency, which particular voter group is not voting for us, what is the reason for them to not vote for us. If let's say we would like to give ticket, let's say political parties confused about 3 candidates to give ticket in that particular assembly constituency. Then you conduct survey to know that which, according to people, which candidate have the higher probability of winning the elections. And survey analytics is where you cannot just put the mathematical part, you also have to use your political knowledge because you have to do a lot of changes state by state. You cannot use the similar algorithm for West Bengal and then for Tamil Nadu. So both the people in both the states have very different demography. They have very different ways to give the answer. They have very different ways in terms of picking their political. And you see a lot of states, like it might be possible people in West Bengal might be more vocal about their political preference compared to, let's say, people who are in Delhi. So you'll have to tweak all your survey questionnaire and the way you are conducting surveys so that you are able to cover those things. So obviously you have to do a lot of work on the algorithm that you have, where you normalize, you analyze the survey results. Now, using this array, I'll give you a few examples where we use this survey in the real life. So in Andhra Pradesh, one of the voter bank was a core supporter of TDP. So whatever that we did, let's say we planned a lot of campaigns, we did a lot of, let's say, announcement in manifesto, a lot of other things also. But that was the one voter bank which was still associated with the DMK party, even just 2 or 3 months before the elections. That voter group was all the female above 40 age. Now, one of the biggest problem is we were at that moment also we were winning the elections, but the problem is you in all the families or houses you have at least one such voter, woman above 40. So if you don't try to tap that particular voter bank, that voter bank might work against you in terms of convincing other people to vote for DD. So you cannot leave out one voter group completely. So first, from survey, we got to know that in the areas like Vijayawada, Vizag, this is a coastal area, and slightly urban area, there people, female above 40, they are not voting for TDP. And we knew the reason because in Andhra Pradesh, TDP had built that really strong self-help group model. So Andhra Pradesh have really good self-help model. They give a lot of support from the government to women working in self-help group. A lot of times they transfer more than like 15,000, 20,000 rupees from the government in the accounts of these members who are part of self-help group. So they did really good work in terms of doing a lot of things for this particular group. So then we conducted the next round of survey to know which one is the most popular female political leader in Andhra Pradesh. And from there, we got to know that Sharmila Reddy, who is sister of Jagan Mohan Reddy. So we were working with Vaisa Sakhi there for Jagan Mohan Reddy. She was one of the topmost female, this likable leader in Andhra Pradesh. So from first survey, we got to know that which is the problem area. Second survey, we got to know which is the topmost female leader there. And then we planned one campaign around 20 to 30 days around Sharmila Reddy, going on ground, meeting only the female voters. So she used to conduct these large meetings only for the female voters. And then we got really good vote share in that particular. So survey is generally we use to understand what is happening at the ground, why that is happening, and how to solve that. All these answers can be solved if you do this survey. But the tricky part is, that's why I mentioned electoral part is still easy. In survey, you don't have any way to cross verify if you're getting that thing is correct or not. because you will get to know only that thing after the election results. So you don't know if you are predicting that thing correctly or not. So that's a most challenging part, because whatever decision that you will make within the campaigns, all those decisions will be on the basis of that particular survey that you are doing. Then you need to be very sure about that. Now, in coming to the prediction of the election results, so we started this thing from Andhra Pradesh. So the current algo that we use, we were able to predict election results in Andhra also, in Delhi also, in West Bengal, where all the news channel and everyone was predicting victory for BJP. We had our range between 210 seats to 220, and Mamta Didi got there around 213 seats. So we were very accurate predicting those things. But that's not the achievement that we generally count. We count the achievement in terms of understanding the state and how we utilize the survey inputs and insights to plan all our campaigns. That's an interesting part. So let's say in West Bengal, at one particular moment, BJP was slightly ahead of TMC when Amphan, all those things came there. So obviously people, when all these cyclone, all those things come, people generate that negativity towards the government. It was the responsibility of government to help them do all those things. So that time, but still one positive factor was, so we asked a lot of questions. One positive factor was Mamta Didi was still leading in terms of first choice for the CM candidate. Now you have to identify who all those voters who are not willing to vote for TMC, but they are still willing to vote for Mamta Didi. You find out that particular voter bank, and you try to have campaigns around only Mamta Banerjee to tap that particular voter bank. Because this particular voter bank is not going to support TMC, because whatever reason they have, they don't like TMC. But they still want to have Mamta Banerjee as CM. So now whatever campaign that you do, or whatever touch base that you would like to have with these voters, you will have to have that thing in the name of Mamta Banerjee, in the name of the top leader that you have. So like that, we have a lot of things that we have planned using the campaigns, using the survey. So survey analytics is really, really useful. All other domains in terms of the e-commerce, education, delivery, all those domains, they use surveys for a lot of decision making. Similar ways, we have tried this thing in the political domains. Now coming to the next one. So third one is social media analytics. Now, as I've shown that the internet coverage is increasing year by year. People have now access to smartphone. People know now how to utilize WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, all those things. So you get a lot of information from social media analytics, from the social media platform. And platform like Twitter, which is open platform, you can get all the information using APIs. So what we did, we tried to build a lot of models around the social media analytics. You do a lot of NLP there. You do a lot of analysis in terms of what the user trying to put there, what user are behaving about something. So you do all those things, you analyze these things. This thing is really useful when you announce something. Let's say a particular party has announced one particular scheme, or let's say even government has announced one particular scheme. You'll see people react instantly in let's say 12 to 24 hours. So you get all the tweets of that particular duration. You try to analyze if people are liking about that thing, or people are suggesting particular changes or not. All those things you can get from the social media. So one of the best thing about social media is that you don't have to have a large setup to do all those things. You just have to have your algorithms in place, and you can get the information and you do the analysis of that thing. So let's say if you are announcing one CM candidate for a particular election. So once you have the announcement, just after that, if you like to know this impact of that particular announcement, you go and you see that what people are discussing on Twitter, Facebook, these platforms, and you try to build. A lot of advanced level analytics can also be done. Let's say, for example, let's say on the profile of Mr. Narendra Modi. If let's say you want to put a post there on the Twitter, now before putting that post, if you'd like to know that you should you push that post in the format of image or video or text. So using the past data, you can know that which one has the highest engagement, which one have the highest reach, which one have the highest positive, like all those things. So from the past data, you can know that either you should put that information in the text format or in the image, even knowing the category of the content also. Let's say that is announcement from the government side. From the past data, you can know that whenever we posted announcement in an image format, that has the highest engagement, that has the highest reach. So you do that thing. So if you can build such advanced model where you can know a lot of things, whatever the activities that you'd like to do on your platforms, before doing that, you can know the impact of that particular activity. So a lot of organizations are trying to do these things. Social media analytics is one thing which is people are trying in a similar format across all the domains. So whatever, let's say that you try in the government, in the PR domain, whatever that you're trying in the education, e-commerce, similar things exactly can be utilized in the political domain also. So this is also really interesting header. The last one is product analytics, which is generally limited to, let's say now all the parties, all the political leaders, they launch a lot of products in terms of mobile apps, in terms of web applications. So to make those products efficient, you obviously have to do the analysis of user behavior on those products. So like in Flipkart, the product analyst team will analyze the behavior of user on all their the platform, which item they are like, where they are facing a lot of problems, where they are not able to go ahead after one particular page. So they do all those analysis. Similar analysis can be done on the mobile apps, web applications, website that you launch in the political domain. So nothing changes in terms of what you are doing in other domains or in doing the political domain, because the format of the products that remains. User behavior might be slightly different from within all these domains, but in terms of what you have to do, what sort of algorithm that you like to use, what sort of, let's say, machine learning, or you want to build something related to AI, all those things you can do here. And obviously you can, a lot of in the technology part, a lot of time we also try to build chatbots, all those things. So those are the things. So now rather than capturing requests using, let's say, shown in the Didi Gibbo. So the advancement of that can be, let's say, you rather than web form, all those things, you have one simple chatbot where people can go interact, and obviously you can provide them. So for few of the problems, you can provide them immediate solution. Someone, let's say, is not able to understand where to apply for scholarship. So rather than asking that person to register the problem, then someone else will call him to explain that thing. On the chatbot, you can have that solution and direct that particular person. So those are the advanced version of all the solutions that we have tried to build till now. Obviously, someone in the domain will come up with those solutions. So this is all about how we have utilized technology and data analytics in this particular domain. Now coming back to one of the questions that people asked in terms of how much these politicians pay for these things. So generally, when you get into any sort of engagement with the political parties, it's very difficult to estimate the cost of that thing. So generally, you first understand what they are trying to do in that particular, let's say they have the problem statement to do one Padyatra. Let's say they want to do 1,000 kilometer Padyatra. Now you build a plan for that thing, and then you tell them, okay, this is the cost of the field operations. This is the cost of in terms of outdoor media marketing. This is the cost of whatever the tech solution that we will build. So it's not like whatever that you see in the news that you quote there 500 crore, 600 crore. It's not like this. It's a very similar to you see that how private consulting firms, they approach to government in any of the, let's say BCG, EY, McKinsey, they also work with the governments. So for them also, that's the thing. You first get the problem statement, you understand that. So let's say if you want to work in Tamil Nadu, if you work in Tamil Nadu with DMK, or let's say with Rajinikanth or Kamal Hassan, all these three projects will have different costs. Let's say for DMK, you don't have to build the party. They already have that. So whatever the activities that you do on ground, you can take the help of the existing system. Similarly, let's say Rajinikanth wants to get into the politics. For him, you'll have to build the political party. You have to build that particular network. So all these different things will have. That's why even getting in the politics is very difficult for the people. Let's say Rajinikanth tried to do that thing, but then eventually decided not to join. Because it's not only about having or knowing what you want to do. Especially in the political domain, you have to have those solutions. You cannot, whatever that work that we have done in the technology or analytics, still you cannot replace the on-ground activities. That will take, let's say, 15 or 20 years to replace those activities. But still you cannot. In US also, you see that all the presidential candidates, they can still conduct physical rallies. So in countries like US, they still have to conduct those physical rallies. India will take around 15 to 20 years to shift from on-ground activities to the digital. But that's the challenge, that you keep building things and you keep picking one by one these on-ground activities these politicians or parties do, and you try to bring that on the digital platform. So as such, there is no figure in terms of how much we charge or how much these politicians pay to us. It's completely on the project, what sort of solution that you are proposing, and then you discuss on that. Very similar to what private consulting firm do, the model that they have in terms of working with the government. Okay, so this is all before we close it. So any doubt that you guys have, anything you'd like to discuss, anything that I missed out and you guys would like to cover that?
Yeah. First of all, I'll like to take this opportunity to ask one question of mine. It's slightly on the political end. Like you mentioned, you use demographical data to in surveys, extracted from surveys and census. My question is, using demographical data like language and categorizing people on that, probably religion, caste, and all that. Will it not in some way reinforce the vote bank politics that we have in our country already, which is to a very great extent a problematic situation? So don't you think using that will reinforce it even more?
So that's the thing. So if you go through the discussion, I never mentioned that we utilize caste or religion.
No, I'm just asking
coming
what
to that.
kind of demographical
I'm
data you're
coming to that
asking.
point.
Yeah.
People have that perception, all the people, that caste and religion is utilized so much in the political domain. But I tell you that the topmost factor to decide anything is the winnability. In a particular assembly constituency, let's say candidate A is from a particular caste, which have 60% population in that assembly constituency. Candidate B is from a caste which have only, let's say, 10% of the population. Still, let's say winnability of candidate B is higher than candidate A. All the political parties will go for the candidate B. So that's the thing. For political parties also, obviously, it's like whatever caste, religion that you see in the normal days, that's there, because eventually you are interacting with the same set of people. But in terms of the elections, for the political parties, the important factor is if that person is able to win the elections or not. Not about in terms of how much population that they have. It might be possible that person reached at the top level in terms of that person is part of the 10 shortlisted candidate because of that one factor. But eventually that candidate will have to, even the candidate who is from the largest community in that particular assembly constituency, that candidate will also have to show the chances of winning that assembly constituency. And if you go through, you can see many examples where candidates who are from only from limited, they have only limited presence in terms of their particular community, and they have won from a large margin. So it's not only about the caste or religion. Now coming to the demography analysis, you have much more information than only the caste and religion. And I would always suggest people to not consider caste and religion in the analysis part, because these are the things which can change even just one day before the elections. Very, very sensitive things. You don't want to base your model on something which is very sensitive. So you have a lot of other information also in terms of how people, let's say age is one thing, where you see, because in age you clearly see young people are more attracted towards the people who are towards the young leaders. That's the perception that people have. So you work around that thing. A lot of, let's say someone who is in Andhra Pradesh, I'll give you an example, in Andhra Pradesh, people above 50, they are still supporter of YSR Reddy. Because when YSR Reddy was chief minister in Andhra Pradesh, he did a lot of work. So young people don't know, because they never had that interaction, or they never got a chance to be in that government. So that's the thing, that because of various factors, it's not only about the age, it's also about that young people might not have that chance to have or see in that particular government. So age, a lot of other things are there in terms of other than caste and religion. So if you see the result of the recent elections, let's say in West Bengal, TMC won more than 200 seats. You cannot win these seats only if you get a support from one or two communities. So you see, if these leader-based elections or the party-based elections they are good in sense, because they are asking people to vote beyond their caste or religion. That's why they are able to get more than, let's say, 3/4 majority in a lot of states.
If any one of the participants have any question, you may raise your hands. Purushottam, yeah.
Yeah, so like it was really an interactive session, and like we got to know about a lot of things. But I have one curious question, that if anyone wants to lay out their career in this domain, then what sort of pathway should one follow? like any sort of internship, or what things need to be learned in this domain?
Fine. So that's actually next slide that I have, that in terms of how you would like to build your career in these things. So first I'll cover, rather than telling that how you build your career path, first I'll give you 4 points. Because of that, you guys should consider this particular domain. First one is, it's a very little explored. So now also when you see a lot of startups, if let's say you have an idea, you want to try something, one thing you need to see that what people have already done in that startup, that particular domain. Now in India, let's say doing something in e-commerce is slightly difficult than doing something in the fintech, because in e-commerce there are still large players, they have done a lot of things, but in fintech there is still very limited thing that has been done. Similarly, in the political domain, there are a lot of opportunities are there, there are a lot to be explored, and very little has been done in India. Second is, you have very clear visibility of your impact. Whatever that solution that you will build, you will get to know, once you launch that, from the next day you will get to know about the impact of that solution. That's a one beauty, because it's an interaction between public parties and the party. You are impacting the real day-to-day life of people. So you get to know the impact of these things. Third one is, this is very closely related to the governance and the policy, because obviously political ecosystem is the one which gets into the government and then they work on the policy or those things. So political ecosystem is very much associated or interlinked with the governance and policy. So if someone, let's say, who is interested in the governance and policy, but that person doesn't want to get into the government setup, because a lot of people have apprehension in terms of a lot of things, how government works, how the nature work that they have. So you would like to stay in the private setup only. So then this is really good choice for them. And also, let's say a lot of people who are interested in the politics, but they don't want to join any political parties. For them, the political consulting or starting something in the political domain is the best choice. Fourth one is, you have the largest potential user base. So all the people who are eligible to vote are your potential user base. So even if you go in e-commerce, people who are capability to spend, those are the target base. If you go in education, people who are students, those are the target base. If you go in grocery or food delivery, there also you have limited target. But this is the one domain where all the people who are eligible, so above 18, all the people are potential user base. Okay. So these are the 4 important reasons. Because of this, people should consider their career in the political domain. Now, in terms of how you can start. So now in last 5 years, like before 5 years, IPAC was the only organization here. Now you see that more than 10, 15 organizations are in this domain, which have really good hold. And people are still trying to build a lot of different solutions here. So you can get into any of these organizations and you can start with the internship also. But people who are, let's say, in 4th year, they can get a job and get into this domain. People who are still, let's say, 1st year, 2nd year, or 3rd year, those people can try for the internship also. Now, once you get into this domain, it's not like you will be restricted to only this domain. It's very easy to switch from political domain to e-commerce to any other domain. Because if, let's say, so there are 2 things. One, if let's say you want to get here only for the data intake, then whatever the work that you will do here, all those things can definitely be utilized in any other domain also. So it's not like you are building your capability just restricted to the political domain. You are building, or you will be working on algorithm which can be utilized across all the domains. So whatever knowledge that you will develop here, whatever experience that you will develop here, that will be useful for all other domains also. So it's easy to switch. For the people who are interested in the policy, they can also get into this domain, because we discuss a lot in terms of deciding the manifesto, deciding the lot of points which require that research, which require that mindset of policy making. So you can get into that also. And then for them also, it's very easy to switch from here to the governance, here to in the private sector also. There are a lot of organizations which are working on helping government in the policy. So you can easily get there. Third biggest thing is the field operations. So if you, let's say, you would like to go in the field operations, you will have that choice to, let's say, you want to have the operations mindset. You want to build your career in operations. You join the field operations work in the political domain. You go on ground, interact with the part. One of the best thing about the field operations here, that you'll get a chance to interact with people who have the experience in the political domain even more than your age. You'll interact with the people who are, let's say, 35 years of political experience. They have been there for 35 years in terms of election or winning the elections. And you are, let's say, 25-year-old, 20-year-old. you'll go there and try to convince those people to accept your proposal. So that's a really interesting. You people in the field operation, they build really strong communication skill. They build really strong convincing power. And obviously you will interact with a lot of masses. You will interact with volunteers. You will interact with a lot of political leaders, parties. It's not easy to manage all those things. So people generally learn a lot of things. And I've seen people who have started their career in field operations in this domain. And then they went on managing a lot of bigger responsibility in other domains also. So like that, you can start with the internship also in the any of the choice that you would like to get in terms of analytics, technology, research, digital communication, digital marketing, field operations, any of these things. And then whatever role that you think in the market, the 90% chances you will find that in the political domain. And then obviously you can try to build that career in the political domain. And let's say if you see that you don't see yourself for a longer period in political domain, it's not difficult to switch to any other domain.
We'll take just one last question from Mohammed Kamil. Mohammed Kamil.
Hello.
He's not here. Yeah, Prem,
Yeah.
you may ask. Prem,
Yeah, hello.
Uh,
Hello,
okay,
yeah.
we'll take question from both of you. Mohammed Kamil, first you go.
Okay, thank you. Sir, Subhash sir, I have two-level question. The first one is, what type of data do you mostly rely on? I mean, is it primary or secondary? And do you carry out your own data? I mean, or do you rely on someone else's data? And second question is, I mean, what type of sampling do you, I mean, rely on? I mean, is that some kind of a spatial kind of sampling? Do you, I mean, mostly practice like random sampling or stratify or something like that? Or I mean, I would want to know about that.
Fine, got it. So in terms of the data that we use, as I mentioned here, we generally rely on census, election data from ECI, social media data from directly from these platforms. And that fourth one is the political campaigns that we run. So during the political campaigns also, so this include both primary and secondary. So we do a lot of research during the campaigns that we plan. We also send a lot of people on ground and collect data from there also. So this is basically subjective information that you collect. So we use these four sources to have the data and information, and we try to build on these because these are the sources which are verified. So from census is the government source, elections is the election commission source. Social media, let's say if you are getting something from Twitter through the API, it's a verified thing. Political campaign, we are collecting that data. So we know that all these four sources can be trusted. So we use these sources. Now in terms of the sampling that we use, in the sampling, generally, there are two ways. One is that before you start conducting survey, you do the sampling and you find out that, let's say this is the particular group you would like to touch base in terms of conducting the survey. Other way is that you interact with people at a larger base. Once you have the responses, then you give the weightage to them on basis of various parameters. So we use both the techniques. On the on-ground survey, we generally beforehand identify that using the sampling, let's say you want to do the survey in particular assembly constituency, in particular state. Then you pick, let's say 1/3 of the assembly constituency. Then let's say you will not be able to cover all the villages in that particular assembly constituency. Then you randomly pick one number and let's say number is 3. Then you go in the 3rd village, then you go in 6th village, then you go in 9th village. So like that, once you go in that particular village, now let's say you don't want to cover all the households. Similar way, you pick one random number, let's say number is 10. So, and you have a capability to cover, let's say 50 houses in a particular village. So that's what you do, that you pick that random number and then you add by that particular sample the number that you have. So you go in 10th house, then 20, 30. Like that, we do that. That is, let's say before collecting the sample, you have decided that who are your sample base. Other process is you conduct, let's say we generally conduct telephonic surveys. You call lot of people, you conduct the responses. Now on the basis of various parameters, let's say parameter is on basis of you want to have the proportional representation of male, female, age group, lot other factors also. So then you give weightage to all the responses on basis of these normalization techniques. So we do both of these things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Prem. can we, sir, extend this by about 10 minutes more?
Yeah,
Will that
fine.
be fine?
Yes, yes.
So, Prem,
Okay, so my question was that politics is a very fluid, unpredictable, and fast evolving area. So basically, how do you change your analysis after some spontaneous incidents that happen in the political sphere? For example, be it some controversies, be it a protest, or some defections.
So one thing is that in the political domain, when you work something, you don't work for 10 days, 15 days, you work. So you work for a longer period. So when you work for a longer period, you need to have such setup to handle these things. That's why we have included the electoral also, and survey also, and the social media also. So let's say you are conducting survey and something happened in particular assembly constituency, you are not able to cover that. But when you use the social media, you might be able to find something there. You go on Google Trend, you see that there is a heat map, and you see that from particular assembly constituency, people are talking about this particular incident. And you are not able to cover that in survey. Then you add one new question to ask in the survey for that particular assembly constituency. So this is basically you have to collect the information not just from one source. So for us also, we depend on not just only surveys. We conduct the surveys, we depend on social media also, we depend on media also. You have the media network, you talk to them, you try to know that if something happened in a particular assembly constituency or not. We have our own team there in field who have a lot of network there also. We try to collect information from them also. So to avoid such thing, you need to have dependency on multiple sources, and then you cross verify among all these sources before taking any decision on that. So that's how we generally handle these things.
I hope that answers the question. Amit, you may ask your question.
Hello.
Yeah, Amit.
Yeah, hello, sir. A very good afternoon. So my question is that as I am working for a multinational company and I am from Uttar Pradesh, so wanted to know that how we can get into this like a technology consultant role, like whether we have to go on the website and apply for any of the political party, or we can like apply through the newspaper, or are there any openings as in like I can apply for any of the consultant role? So that's my question, how to get into, because this is a very huge platform, and there are a lot of opportunities which, as we discussed, like there are like into social media or into surveys, there are many things. So how to get into this kind of role? That's my question.
Okay. So Amit, one thing is we are not as such not connected to any political party or government, political entities that you, private entities that we have. So to apply for any of these organizations, let's say for IPAC, you can go on our website, you'll see the job openings there and you can directly apply there. Similarly, all other organizations which are there, ABM, ACT, you go on their websites and you will find the careers page and you can directly apply there. So you'll not be applying for any political parties. All these organizations, they work independently. They are private consulting firm, registered as private companies. So you'll not be getting in touch with any of the political parties. You will directly apply for these political consulting firms and you can get into this.
Okay, sir. So we can as work as in from home also, just have the access to the internet and all the other technological tools, and we can work on a part-time basis or also on a full-time basis as well.
That's
Correct,
depend on like all these organizations, they hire for different things. They hire for the part-time also. They hire from work from home, work from office, all the modules that they have. So you go on their website, you'll find that detail. Let's say you find something related to work from home, part-time, and that is suitable to your capabilities also. So you pick that. You will find all these options.
Okay. And let's say if I'll search for, let's say ITech, so what is the exact like
Indian PSC, you can search for Indian PSC and you'll get that website.
Indian PSC, or
Yes.
elsewise, like what I should write? It's a political party's assistance, or what should we write in?
Write the
Google, like-
political consulting. That's the thing. It's a political consulting, not the, have that said, it's not related to any of the political parties. So political consulting is the right term to use for this. And if let's say you want to have only tech wala thing, the Polytech is the right word to use for this. You can search political consulting.
Just one last question. Is political consultancy a regulated industry? Yeah.
regulated in what terms?
He has not mentioned it. Vipul, could you unmute yourself and ask this? What exactly you meant by this question?
Yeah, people.
Yes, Vipul.
By regulated, I meant if today I wanted to start a political consulting firm tomorrow, let's say. So are there any kind of laws, regulations, or approvals that I need? Like, are there any freelancers also in this industry? Just in that direction, I was thinking.
So
If I have to,
it's a very similar to any other organization that you'd like to register. It's the same process that you have to follow. And lot of firms don't even register themselves as a political consulting firm. Let's say you are here to build only tech solutions. So why would you register yourself as a political consultant? You are a tech firm. Your client base is political domain. So similarly, whatever way that you, let's say whatever the scope that you have for your company, or let's say as a freelancer also. For the freelancer, you don't have to register anything. For the company, you directly registered as whatever the normal rules that they are there. Similar things. Nothing specific about political domain, nothing extra about the political domain. You'll have the same requirements as you register something in education or in finance or in e-commerce.
Aditya, I wanted to ask, is IPAC trying to get into governance consultancy, or will it limit itself to campaign and elections?
So we are not trying to get into the governance. We are, because political domain is the one thing that we still have a lot to do. So in a near future, we are not trying to get into governance. Because we know that whatever that we have done in the political domain, that is also only 5 to 10%. So there are a lot of things can be done in the political domain.
And
Both of them were quite similar in terms of impact.
Yes, but both of them have very different nature. At one place, you are asking people to elect people. At the other position, you are not asking people. You are asking government to do something. So it's very different. But obviously, the technology that you use, analytics that you use, whatever solution that you build for the political parties. I gave the example of the Vigebolu. Similarly, solution can be utilized for the governments also. So in terms of the tech solution that you build, in terms like let's say survey. So if you are trying to collect issues in a particular geography for a particular party, similar things can be done for the government also. So a lot of things that we do in the political domain that can be done for the government also, but for as IPAC, we would like to stay in the political domain.
And on the last note, I would just like to ask, in the upcoming UP elections, is IPAC involved in any way? And if you have any inputs or info about that.
So currently we are not involved in UP elections or any of the elections which are going to happen in
Incoming future.
So we are not involved. We are trying something in Goa. That's something new that we are trying. We're trying to do something for a relatively new party there. So for us also, it's obviously we have done work in UP, we have done work in Punjab also. We also a lot of time think of trying something new in this domain rather than just working in a traditional way. So that's what we are trying currently in Goa.
Thank you so much, sir, for joining us today. I'm pretty sure every participant who joined us today would have learned a lot, and especially about a new career choice and a domain that is emerging in India. I thank you on behalf of Public Policy and Opinion Cell for giving us your precious time and interacting with us. I thank all the audience who have joined us today. Coming up at 4 o'clock, we'll be coming back with a UPSC talk, and the alumnus of IIT Kanpur who cleared UPSC Civil Services in 2020, they'll be joining us at 4:30. They are Rajat Ubekar, AIR 49, and Prakhar Jain, AIR 9. We wish you all join us for that session. Thank you all. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. That was a nice session.